But guys, in a stack of comics, my name is Reed. With me, as always, is Mike. Uh, with the anticipation of a MCU film, which we haven't really had a traditional MCU film in a while. I guess Deadpool and Wolverine was kind of in there, but Captain America:
Eh,
Brave New World is going to be the first kind of MCU film in well over a year. And so, with that kind of building up, Mike and I started talking about anticipating seeing that film, and then started looking at what do we think the best movies are of all time, the worst comic movies of all time. And so we kind of narrowed both down where we got five of the best and five of the worst. So over the next couple of weeks, what we're going to do is we're just going to go through kind of one at a time what we think the five worst and the five best films are. And we're going to start with the worst. It's funny is because when we were going through these lists, there was for one movie for the best, there was one that rose to the top really easily. And for the worst, there was also one film that very easily rose above the rest or fell below the rest to be
breaks
the
my heart.
worst comic book film of all time. And so we'd start with that one, the worst comic film of all time. Number one on this list, we would say is 2022's The Flash, which we believe is the worst comic book film ever made. Now, when we say this, here's the qualifying things that we're going to look at with this. This does not mean that there are movies that are not worse technically. There's what that was the Corman Fantastic Four movie that never got released in the 90s. You have some of those old, was it the Salinger guy playing Captain America? You've got stuff like the Dolph Lundgren Punisher movie, David Hasselhoff, Nick
Ooh, that
Fury
was
movie.
bad.
But
Yeah.
what we're looking at, what makes a worse list is we're
But
looking at when did the creative decisions made by the company in adapting the film make it the worst? Because when you look at some of these bad ones, there's stuff like budgets or the fact that Hollywood hadn't really made superhero movies to a certain point or special effects being an issue. When we look at these worst lists, these are ones that really the money was there, the formula to make good comic book movies was there, the source material was there, and they basically on their own decided to either botch the source material or botch the storyline. And I don't think there's a movie that does any of that worse than The Flash. So we kind of have three main reasons that we feel this is the worst film of all time. And number one, and I'll kick it to you on this, Mike, is the fact that this is a Flash movie about Barry Allen, where Barry Allen actually never appears in this film. Because the character that we got played by Ezra Miller in this film is nothing even close to Barry Allen whatsoever. I know for you that was the main sticking point that you had. I'll kind of let you kick it there. As someone who anticipated this movie for years as a Flash fan, how did that strike you with this film?
it was kind of heartbreaking. But you could see the train wreck coming as they started to pull it together. Not only was it not Barry, this young kind of goofy character was something invented by the actor, and I guess the director liked it and just had him roll with it because the director doesn't know who Barry Allen is, and neither did the actor. And what's worse is they didn't care, and
Mhm.
that's what crushed the movie for us Flash fans. And then on top of that, to add insult to injury, they decide to write the script and give us a double
The
dose
double dose of the
of the
inaccurate character.
character that wasn't Barry. Now, granted, his name on screen was Barry Allen, but whatever he portrayed was not Barry Allen. And you could say, oh, but Barry's boring or whatever. No, Barry's a straight laced guy who's very intelligent, who has a very beautiful wife. And he helps, he does good in the world. What's wrong with that? Oh, it's not edgy enough. He needs to be young and wear a hoodie and be kind of disgruntled,
Goofy and
and
stupid.
then
Yeah.
goofy at the same time and cracking jokes. And it's like there's some weird hybrid of whoever this generation of media consumer was in the creative department. It was some hybrid of Wally West's comic relief in
Kind
the
of like what
Justice
Bart,
League
it was a
movie.
little bit of, it seemed a bit more like Bart Allen
Yeah, oh,
and
and
Wally
Bart Allen, right?
West.
Yeah,
And I think that's the thing where this movie fails is I know with Flash fans, especially, like you and I have heard the criticism of Barry Allen before, because I know he's your favorite character. You've obviously heard people talk about that. But the thing is, I honestly think in this film, if you removed them calling him Barry in the movie and took the costume away and just showed the actual character scenes of how the actor is playing the role, I think you could give me a dozen guesses and I'd never really think that's Barry Allen.
Yeah,
And
I
then
know.
one of the things that you look at with actor portrayals, you can sometimes say it's not perfect, right? I look at the Spider-Mans, right? Holland, Garfield, Maguire. All of them played Peter a little differently. But if you watch that film, if they didn't tell you what character that was, if you kind of blanked out the audio, removed the costume, and you just saw the actor, all three of them, you'd look and go, oh no, he's playing Peter Parker. Like I see something in there that he's playing the character. Barry is a smart and competent character. If anything, he's more science based and straight laced than he is goofy. There's nothing in this movie whatsoever. And what really kills me about this is we've seen this kind of turn around now where like the director of the movie came out a couple days ago and was like, well, it's just people don't like the character of the Flash. And it's like, well, maybe if you'd actually made a movie about the Flash, we would know that.
Yeah.
This was not the Flash. And I
You
think
know, and
that's the biggest area where this is a fundamental failure is we never actually saw this character. We saw some weird amalgamation of a bunch of different versions.
and the whole thing about, one of the big things, and we've had videos about this before, is the character's love interest. I mean, Iris West being, the reporter, and that team of those two together make the character the Flash. He is who he is because of who he is and not what he can do. He is who he is with, he has his wife, and he, in gets these superpowers, and he can do all those but if you boil that all away, we like the character because of who he is. He's a smart guy who wants to do good in the world, and he has a great partner by his side who has his back, and that's just a great story. You can't go wrong if you stick to the source material. That's what we always say.
Well, the thing is, they deviate so far from the source material in this movie, and then we're still just talking Barry Allen. What's so
Yeah.
interesting is there's no character arc for him in this movie. There's the Iris is technically in the film. There's no love interest angle brought up. There's a weird scene where he acts like an idiot at his apartment in
Yeah.
front of Iris, where she's basically spouting off information he already knows and asking questions the audience already knows. There's no spark or chemistry between the two. There's no plot line of him dating. I mean, not even a singular scene of like Barry's late for a date, right? To get the comic book trope going. Nothing. Barry doesn't have a personal animus with the villains in this movie. He's fighting General Zod in this alternate dimension of it. So there's nothing where, the first Flash movie ever, it's not Cold, it's not Grodd, it's not Reverse Flash, it's not Mirror Master, it's no one who's a Flash rogue. It's a recycled Superman villain from a decade ago. It
So
just,
bad.
it was an awful choice. There was no arc for Barry. And like you said, the double dose of the bad actor is the horrible part of this movie because I'm sure Ezra Miller's good in other things. I don't think they just plucked him out and said, you're the Flash. But when you look at all the controversy that he brought to the movie with the off screen antics, all the horrible things that were alleged, even if you look past those, his performance is nothing to do with Barry, especially because we saw John Wesley Shipp play the character. We saw Grant Gustin on a low budget CW thing where probably the entire season of The Flash in terms of budget was probably the catering budget for this WB movie. And we saw this character played well, and they basically decided we're going our own way and we're doubling down on it with two versions. And even thematically, what could have been interesting is if you would have had that our modern day Barry Allen is kind of a mess because of what happened to his parents. This movie has this dual thing where there's this other Barry where his parents lived. You could have even thematically gone, you know what? The other Barry has his life together and is married to Iris and is a straight-laced police scientist. And the Barry who lost his parents isn't that. That could have been an interesting dynamic to explore, especially because in the comic book realm, right, the Jeff Johns made that change where Barry's mom died. That wasn't always built into his thing. And so I think even comic book wise, that could have been interesting as your classic old Flash versus this newer version. They didn't do anything with that. They decided, no, the one whose parents lived and didn't go to jail is an even bigger idiot and mess than the one who did. It was a disaster from a character front on that. Not to mention the performance from Ezra Miller was just frantic and all over the place and never hit. I think the same thing for, I think it's her name is Kiersey Clemens playing Iris. It's hard to even judge her performance as Iris because she's such a non-entity in the film. She has maybe one scene at
Yeah,
most. And
yeah.
so, yeah, I think that stands out as one of the biggest fundamental failures. The second reason we thought this was bad of the big main three, unlike some comic book movies that have been bad because the writers have decided to invent a storyline that's not in the comics, or where they adapted a storyline from the comics that a lot of people hated. This one adapted a well-beloved story that was at least well received from a sales standpoint and seems to have some enduring legacy. And there was already an animated film adaptation of this that was incredibly well received as well. And so that's the other part that's bad. Is all the parts that make this movie terrible are choices they made that deviate from the existing story and give us a worse story. And that to do Flashpoint and not feature the Reverse Flash in the movie at all, but instead
Mind
do
boggling.
this dark
Mind boggling.
Flash, it was just, especially because one of the coolest things about Flashpoint is the gut punch of the story. I remember reading that in Singular Issues when it came out, was when you as a reader believed, oh, this was Thawne. Thawne manipulated this. Thawne made this happen. That and it's one of the great things about Thawne is you hate him so much as a character. And the gut punch was at the end when you realized, no, this was Barry. Barry went back and changed it. Like, that's the hook. That's the mystery. That's the thing that, and I think it was the fifth issue where you realize, oh man, Barry's the one who screwed up. This movie doesn't delve into the mystery at all. It's just from the beginning, they let you know Barry did this. And I
Yeah.
think where that's such a mistake is I know there's people who go, well, in the comic book, everybody knows this. Look, we as comic book fans have to understand that the audience doesn't know these stories the way that we do. I remember I've never seen a greater divide of this than when I went to take my wife to see Winter Soldier, the Captain America film. And I'm like, are they really going to drag out the surprise that it's Bucky? Like,
Yeah.
everyone knows this. And then I will never forget my wife being genuinely shocked that it was Bucky from the first film that was the Winter Soldier. And I was like, that's who they're doing this for because these movies are for general audiences. They see the name Winter Soldier, they have no idea. And the same thing would have been for Flashpoint. Yes, us as comic book fans know Barry's the one who did this. Barry's the reason things fell apart. But for your general audience member, had it been executed well, that could have been a real kind of shocking, like, oh wow, like the hero was the one who messed up here instead of Thawne. It just overall messed everything up because I think that's the other huge piece of Flashpoint. In Flashpoint, you watch Barry's life unravel because he wakes up in this world where he was the Flash, he was happy, and then he wakes up one day and everything's different. In this movie, you never see him happy. His life's a mess already. So when this epic change happens, you haven't lost anything because his life was terrible before. I don't know. That stood out to me, Mike. Did that hit you when you watched this, especially in comparison to the book and the overall kind of I know the straight to DVD kind of animated one they did that you loved a lot.
Hey, I love that one. It was great. And yeah, the movie, it's almost like the movie never even tried to get there. It's almost like they just threw it out and, they were probably just writing whatever. I don't know. I have no words. And it's hard for me as a Flash fan because, we had a lot of us Flash fans had a lot of hope on that movie. And because of its failure, it'll, my favorite character will probably never get a movie again. So it's harsh, and I feel like it's one thing to take up a comic book movie, and we've all seen this, and the writers just you know write their own story with the character.
Yeah.
That's what a comic book writer does. You have 80 years of legacy, and what are you going to do this month that's different? You got to think of those. But it's another, and you can almost understand like the filmmaker maybe not being a comic book fan going, okay, this story's been told really well twice. I think I have to write something different, but not having, a genuine understanding or love of the character this is what you get. And it was heartbreaking for a Flash fan because, superhero movies were all the rage for 20 years, and we finally got our movie. And
And
it
it had
turned out
nothing to do with the character. And
no.
then I think that takes us to the third and final point, and it's the lost potential of this film, what it destroyed. Um, One, the dumbest thing of this movie that's unforgivable. The DCEU was ending. This
And it
was a
was
reboot.
this movie would have teed up everything.
This movie had the potential of actually in real life doing what was happening in real life in terms of in the cinematic universe. We all knew when this movie came out. The DCEU is done. By this time this movie was released, Cavill had been fired, Godot had been fired, Affleck had been fired. We all knew. We're staring down the end of the DCEU. It's over. Gunn is coming in and he is resetting everything. This Flashpoint in the comics did the exact thing where it trashed continuity and rebooted everything. You
Yep.
literally had the movie that was doing exactly what you needed to be done to reset the universe, and you chose not to do it. That is the most unforgivable thing in the film. I think the other part, it's the lost potential of we'll never actually get that because this bombed so badly. Flashpoint as a comic is an amazing story for the potential of a DC film. And when you actually look at the pieces of the DCEU that were there, what is so weird is, surprisingly, DC's decisions all set this movie up really well. Because we had Superman, he's a key figure in the film. Wonder Woman is a key figure in the film with a beloved actress. Aquaman is a key figure. Both of those were hit characters, both of whom appeared in the film. You have a older Batman in Michael Keaton who agrees to come back, and Flashpoint has an old Shazam, who plays a huge role in the comics. Cyborg, who plays a huge role in the comic. Deathstroke was Joe Manganiello. He was in the Flashpoint of it. You literally had as much as a cluster as the DCEU was. You had all the key players from Flashpoint casted, well received, and there. This could have been a brilliant send off for all of them. One last hurrah. Instead, we did none of it. We don't see Wonder Woman has a weird kind of forced in cameo that you could tell was very much filmed real quick. Affleck's Batman got his goodbye real quick. Momoa's an after credit scene. They had all the pieces. And in all honesty, because this movie did so bad and they've already used the plot, we'll never get this grand epic story from DC
It
in live
really would
action.
have been like an end game type of movie for DC.
Mhm.
And I'm sure it probably started out that way on the idea table. But, you know,
Well, and
it's
that's where it's such a mistake to do. Hey, the first ever Flash solo movie. Let's do a movie that's an actual DC Universe event instead. And you
yeah,
could just tell that was where this went wrong. The other missed potential of this film, you wasted Michael Keaton.
I
You wasted
know.
Michael Keaton. It will always haunt me that Michael, because ever since Batman Beyond debuted as a cartoon, and I think it was the late 90s, Batman fans have dreamt up the idea Michael Keaton coming back to play an older Batman. How amazing would that be? You got him? He said yes. He comes back. He's in the costume. You are, and again, I would have taken the idea of he's playing like the Thomas Wayne version of
Yeah,
Batman in this film.
yeah,
That would have been, we were all so excited as Batman fans. Keaton's back. I mean, like, that was the thing with the trailer. As bad as this movie was, the trailer where Keaton's in the old costume and looks and goes,
yeah,
I'm Batman. Amazing.
yeah,
Amazing. And I'll say,
yeah.
as bad as this movie was, that still is one of the only cool parts of the film. Like, I will
That's the
always
best
be
scene in the
happy
movie.
I went to see the movie just to see that portion of it.
Yeah,
They waste it. Instead, Michael Keaton's comeback is wasted in this awful comic book movie where he has very small of a role. Barry's actions basically broke his timeline. And the
yeah.
Keaton version of Batman has his head bashed in by a random Kryptonian from Man of Steel. You wasted it. You wasted it. You look at again live action debut of Supergirl. Say what you will about the arc for her. The actress, I think, did a really good job.
She
She looked
did.
good in the costume. She played the role as good as you could. They obviously substituted her into the Superman role from Flashpoint. Wasted her potential. Only time
Yeah,
we'll ever see that actress. And so That's the biggest piece of this. That's you wasted Flashpoint, you wasted Keaton's return, you wasted the debut of Supergirl, you wasted a chance to say goodbye to the DCEU with all these characters that you'd already cast that we could have had a final hurrah with. To me, that's what makes it the worst. In that it's a Flash movie that's not about the Flash. It's a movie that doesn't have an arc for Barry. It's a Flash movie that doesn't have any traditional rogues villains or rogues gallery form. There's no love interest. There's no character development. You wasted a huge event. You wasted Michael Keaton, and then you throw in the topper on this. And there's a couple other things that I think just push it. Like this is the icing on the cake of the
Okay,
already bad stuff.
hit me with it.
You have the classless CGI cameos from Adam West
Oh
and
yeah,
Christopher Reeve and Nick Cage. And Nick Cage isn't happy he was in the movie. He hates that they put his Superman in this movie. He's like,
yeah.
why did you do that? I didn't want you to do that. You get the weird, I thought, kind of tasteless CGI of Chris Reeves Superman. You get the Adam West Batman showing up. And this attempt to, oh, all of DC exists, and it's in this awful freaking movie. And the other part is, I'd actually be okay with that if this was some epic, world changing, kind of awesome fight scene between two speedsters. Like if this had been a Barry versus Thawne fight at the end of the film, and you're just seeing
That's what we wanted
timelines
to
are
see.
collapsing. Instead, like Barry and Dark Flash don't even fight in the movie. They literally go into this weird, like CGI arena that's
Bubble
supposed to
arena.
represent how time is going.
Uh,
There's no conflict. You throw in the disrespect of putting those actors in this crappy movie. Um, it's just so bad from that. And then I think the other part, and this is for if we keep going, but this is why I think it's the worst for Flash fans. You're one. You're one. I'm not as huge a Flash fan as you. He's probably one of my top 10 characters, but not my favorite like you. You mentioned this to me all the time. There were constant teases of Flash movie for people.
yeah,
You had the John Wesley Ship show. I think right around then there was because Batman was so successful, people thought they'd make one there. There had been constant rumors of a reboot or a start, or they're going to make a Flash this or a Flash that. That fans waited as long as they did, and then
yeah.
they got a movie about the character that wasn't even about the character. And now DC, because they mismanaged this so bad, you've got the director of the film coming out and saying, well, it's just because people don't like Barry Allen. People don't like The Flash. They don't really care about him. You've got James Gunn saying, you know what? I have a place for Metamorpho and Creature Commandos and Peacemaker in my universe. But The Flash is on hold for a little bit
Yeah.
because of this movie,
We're gonna
especially because
we're gonna
DC
have
was
to.
so responsible for everything of why this failed. And this is, I think, where it stands out on its own. If you had to sum up, where did the DCEU go wrong? It is this movie more than anything else. Lazy CGI, needless cameos, world building that we had doesn't matter because we never saw the world built up in the first place. And so that when they put stakes in, we don't really care. We're not invested in Barry because you never gave us a freaking solo movie of the character for us to care about him. You tacked him on as a cameo character in a Justice League movie that everybody hated. And then you gave us a solo movie acting like we already knew him when we didn't. You did no villain. You recycled actors that nobody really wanted. You used plot lines for movies that weren't all that popular. Oh, Michael Shannon Zod is back. That's great in a Superman movie. Has nothing to do with the Flash.
Yeah.
We're instead of doing the story, we're going to do pointless switch to oh, it's Supergirl instead of Superman. Aren't you so excited? It's like no, we actually would have really liked to see Superman in the movie. It's just everything about this was symbolic of what was wrong with DC, down to the fact that when this movie was being released with the trailers, you had all these WB executives flat out lying. It's one of the greatest comic book movies ever made. That's all we were hearing for like the year before this. Because everyone was like, aren't you going to cancel it? Because Ezra Miller's got all these controversies. Is this movie ever going to see the. And down to James Gunn and everybody. Oh, no, it's amazing. I mean, I think James Gunn, the year it came out, was like, it's my favorite movie of the year. It's even more, I love it even more than my own Guardians of the Galaxy 3 movie. I mean, they were hyping the Andy Muschietti, the guy who directed it, they were like, he's directing the next Batman film because of how great this is. and it was a train wreck. It's like I don't believe if any of them actually thought that. I'm concerned that any of them work with films.
I
And the
am
thing is,
concerned.
it's either that or you are bald-faced lying to people to try to get them to care about this. There's so much wrong with it. I honestly, Mike, I think you're probably the same boat as me. It's a comic book movie. The studio would have been significantly better off had they just taken a loss on it and wrote it off the way they did Batgirl. Had they just gone, you
They
know what, we're not releasing it, throw it
they
into
did
the
that with the
pit and lose the money and
Batgirl.
get a tax write-off.
Yeah, they probably should have. At least there would have been a chance for a Flash movie in the future. But since they greenlighted it and got everybody to go out and I don't know. Tell us what you think below, guys. Are there any fans of the movie out there? I'd definitely like to hear from you.
If there's
Put
anyone
a,
who can
put
put
a
a
salve,
positive
put a
spin,
salve on my wounded soul. Tell me it was good. I'd like to think
here's the
you're right.
positive silver lining to close us out on, Mike. Okay. See, they made a movie about your character finally. It wasn't just a bad movie, though. It was the worst one ever. So no one has made a worse superhero movie than The Flash. At least he's first place in something.
That's bad.
I feel
That
bad
that
for you,
that
my friend. I
that
get
that's
it's
me.
pretty bad when the $200 million movie and you're like, at least there's the CW show.
Yeah, yeah. And then that went off the air. So now there's no Flash. So we'll be Flashless for a while, but that's
We'll
okay.
see.
We're used
Let
to
us know
it.
what you guys think. Do you guys think this is the worst superhero movie of all time? I think me and him are pretty set that this is the worst one of all time. Again, not
Unfortunately.
from a technical standpoint. I'm sure there's worse ones you can find, but most movies that are worse than this, it's because of budget, lack of commitment, all that stuff. This had everything you needed to succeed, and it threw it all the way. Let us know what you guys think below. Our next video, we will go positive. Me and Mike are going to review what we think the greatest comic book film of his all time is. And then we'll kind of go down the list and do the second worst, second best, all that. Let us know what you guys think. As always, thank you so much for watching. God bless you. We'll catch you in our next video.
Thanks, everybody.